which is item 9, National Policy Statement on Urban Development, Well-Functioning Urban Environment and Qualifying Matters. Welcome, Emily and Mark. I'll let you introduce this item before we move on to questions.
Thank you. So staff have been working with you in recent months to progress a package of changes to the Christchurch District Plan required to implement the National Policy Statement on Urban Development. The changes will enable greater intensification of housing. By law, we need to notify this plan change by August 2022. Today is the first formal step in this overall process. We're asking you to confirm all of the matters relevant for well-functioning urban environment and qualifying matters that we can look at, can look to include in the district plan changes. The qualifying matters identified are areas of the city are unsuitable for enabling more housing under the government's new rules. We are also asking you to endorse that staff continue to investigate these matters further to make sure we have sufficient and site-specific evidence to make sure they are eligible for inclusion in the Christchurch District Plan. The qualifying matters include some aspects already protected in the current district plan, such as significant trees, residential character areas, and hazard areas. We know that trees are important to you and the community. The RMA is very limited in how we protect trees. Through the district plan, we protect trees as best as we can, and this is through the scheduled trees in Appendix 9 of the district plan. We are not able to provide a blanket tree protection. Through the qualifying matters, we are picking up this schedule. If the schedule was to be updated through a future plan change, this would get picked up as a qualifying matter. Additionally, as part of applying the new bill, staff are investigating the possibility of using new financial contributions tools with regards to tree canopy cover. This work is in its early stages as we wait to see what the final wording of the new bill is likely to be. We propose considering additional qualifying matters that relate to infrastructure constraints, such as wastewater networks, the Christchurch Central Recovery Plan blueprint, and emergency radio communication pathways. If you approve this work continuing, we will return in February next year to provide more details and thereafter ask for your approval to seek feedback from our community in the second quarter of next year. The feedback will inform the plan change that we will eventually be formally notifying before the government's August 22 deadline.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on this? No? Yanni.
Yeah, thanks. So just in regards to the tree canopy and also the urban forest plan, are we able to get a sense of if we wanted to strengthen our tree protection, what sort of evidence or process do we need to do to get better protection?
So the RMA is quite limited, and it needs to be site-specific trees that are protected. We can't do blanket tree protections through the RMA.
Right.
So in development of the district plan review, the proposed district plan was subject to review a number of years ago. There was evidence compiled on every individual tree of the values that it provides. So that includes a number of aspects, including heritage. Some trees, for instance, were planted in commemoration of an event. Amenity was another, and those various values require some assessment and would be necessary for any additions to the tree schedule.
Right. And do you have a sense of how many trees lost protection through the district plan review, approximately? Like, did we lose a lot of tree protection? Or?
Would need to come back to you on that.
So if we wanted, so the best way to protect trees is to get them identified individually and then put into our district plan as significant. So given that that's one of the qualifying matters we're going to government with, are we able to set up a parallel process to start doing that now?
The updating of the tree schedule would require that evidential basis. To progress a plan change would require additional resource that we don't have, and shifting resource away from existing priorities. So that would require further work. As and when that plan change takes effect, that would constitute a qualifying matter in the context of the national policy statement.
Back to us, can we get advice? I mean, I'm just worried we're waiting to early 2022. Like, this is...
That's next month, early 22, or probably February. So
Yeah,
well,
I mean, reality is
away from
it's
22.
going to be...
Yeah, I think that everyone shares your concerns about, well, maybe not everyone, but most people will share your concern about the loss of our tree canopy and actually how low it is to start with. I think it's really important as elected members we actually get a briefing. So that's obviously been identified, and we're trying to have that as soon as possible.
Can I just check?
So that will include around protecting trees. Like, we can't, try and make resolutions in this setting.
But I get that. But we had a briefing previously where staff actually outlined a huge number of benefits of trees, and the issues with trees. And this was came out of the tree policy hearing where we actually asked for advice. I guess what I'm concerned about is just having another briefing telling us what we already know doesn't progress getting the work done. So is it possible to just get a memo back around what the likely cost of a district plan change would be, so that we can be informed for the draft annual plan, so that there's actually something tangible? And I guess the other concern is that I'm worried that we don't have enough resource for the urban forest plan, because that's falling behind schedule as well. So, I mean, I'm just interested in actually getting tangible action rather than just another briefing, because I think we kind of know what the issues are.
We staff will put a memo together for you and outline the cost of a plan change for protecting trees.
And I know also that the staff have sent a memo around updating the tree canopy with iTree, or the iTree, which is with the university now. But just in terms of like the qualifying matters, I was just interested in coming up with a mechanism where we could look at addressing the inequity that exists in some suburbs around the lack of tree canopy. So is that, when that briefing comes back, would that be able to identify additional qualifying matters that we can submit to government?
The inequity of tree cover, there's an option of addressing that through greater planting of trees in those areas where there's deficiencies, but that would be outside the district plan.
Sorry, I guess what I meant, just at a high level, say, for example, we suggested a qualifying matter that said in certain areas where we've got very little or low tree canopy that's in decline, significant decline, because of infill and intensification, that we restrict the amount of densification that can happen subject to trees being protected. E.g., there's parts of the city that we know where there is a lack of trees, and the trees that are there are being removed at a far greater rate. That's having a really negative impact. So could we have something that kind of identified those areas and put greater protection into existing trees in terms of requirements for intensification?
What you're suggesting in the context of the district plan would be to say that trees in areas that are deficient in tree cover have a greater value than trees in areas where there's a greater number. Is that what you're suggesting?
Effectively making it harder for areas that have low tree canopy coverage at the moment to have trees removed. Yeah.
So the assessment of values of individual trees across the city does not take account of equity, and there's a question in my mind of the appropriateness of doing that in the context of the purpose of the Resource Management Act isn't about managing equity per se. It's about sustainable management. And
so, but from an environmental point of view, there's areas in the city that lack the environmental sustainable benefits that trees provide, right? Mm-hmm. So I was just interested if we could identify geographic areas which have lower tree canopy at the moment and put some greater restrictions on what can be done. But
my advice to the council on that would be that it wouldn't stack up as a reasonably arguable qualifying matter under the NPS, because under the NPS, the qualifying matters are broadly matters of national significance, and then there's a catch-all one at the end that says any other matter that makes high-density development inappropriate in an area. But the requirements for identifying that qualifying matter include very site-specific analysis that identifies the site to which the qualifying matter relates and evaluates the specific characteristics on a site-specific basis to determine the spatial extent where intensification needs to be compatible with a specific matter. Well, and the specific matter you're describing is an absence of trees. And I have significant doubt that we'd be able to get that home under that sort of assessment criteria. We can give that a fuller assessment if you'd like and bring it back in the briefing.
I don't know how others feel. I think it would be useful because what we know is that we've shallow trenched with a neighbour, which prevents us from planting a lot of trees in the public space now as well. So anything that we could look at in terms of when we get the tree canopy data in, to looking at how we address that imbalance. There's been lots of research that's come out with Radio New Zealand. There's been people that have been interviewed about the impact of lack of tree canopies in communities and what it means in terms of well-being.
I totally understand that, but what this paper is about is something called a qualifying matter as defined in a specific piece of regulation. And the question I'm asking myself is whether this matter would stack up as a qualifying matter. And I really doubt that it would.
The question's been asked and answered. I think we all understand there is an issue of trees that we're trying to address. Can we move on to another?
Just to clarify though, I thought the idea of having site-specific qualifying matters, the question really is, can a site be more than just one or two dwellings? Could it apply to a area unit, for example? So I thought that would be good to get answered. Just get some advice.
The site is at a parcel level, so a site is down to a parcel level, so individual properties is the scale that would need to provide information for qualifying matter.
Pauline.
Just quickly, it's a little bit outside this, but do we have a definition of a notable tree that you could send round, circulate?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. And my question is that in the new NPS, it states that the rules around intensification, one of the rules, must preserve some outlook from buildings. Now, what does that mean? What is an outlook? Could it be an outlook onto trees? So, that could be part of it, obviously. Does it mean you're looking at more than just the next door building's wall?
I think it's a little bit hard for officers to answer that question right here. I'm sure they can have a look at
but
what the
where I'm
definition would be
heading
and
with it, that maybe we could build in that, hey, wouldn't it be good if you could look out on some trees or a tree?
My understanding of outlook is it's more about the space to open a window, so it's that kind of to provide that there is actually.
Outlook. It's opening a window.
So can we just get a confirmation of what the definition of outlook is?
Or if there is one. If there is one.
Yeah.
Any other?
Thank you.
Anne. Mike, Anne.
4.2, I'm just trying to find it. You may consider some other qualifying matters as they arise to investigate further. Can you give us an idea of what they might be? Have you got any thoughts, or will they just?
So we wanted to make sure that there was some ability to capture anything that's raised through public engagement or aspects that come up as we start progressing a little bit more detailed analysis of this work. There isn't anything at the moment that we've identified that we would carry through as a qualifying matter. If we have identified it, it's in the list.
Thank you. And we have talked about excellent urban design and those sorts of things. Do you feel confident that those sorts of things are implicit in what we're saying here, that that's what we are asking for through this?
So the urban design aspects that we would be looking to bring through in the intensification work would likely be in how we frame up the objectives, policies and provisions for the high density and medium density chapters that we'd be looking to work through as part of this intensification plan change. So that's where those
conversations.
Provisions would likely sit. We'll have to see what the new bill allows us to put forward with regards to that. So that's something we submitted on through our council's submission.
Yes, that's right. We did. Okay, thank you. And just, we talked about DCs and offering incentives to developers to do certain things that we'd like them to do. Where does that sit in here?
So the DC policy is an LG policy, so that's sitting outside of the Resource Management Act, and we are doing a bit of work, so we will need to look at that policy to make sure that it's compatible with the new direction that we're providing through this intensification plan change. And we're also, because we're bringing in financial contributions, or potentially looking at bringing in financial contributions, as the new bill has provided us that opportunity. So we'll be looking at DCs in relation to that as well, make sure we're not double dipping.
Thank you, Anne. All right, I'm happy to move these resolutions. Do I have a seconder? Jimmy, open up for debate. Who would like to speak first? No one? Excellent. I'll put...
Just quickly, I think it's really good. I just would really like you to build in something about into the consultation, particularly about that definition of outlook, and preferring it to be more than just being able to open a window. So I think if we could get some feedback, public feedback on that, would be really, really helpful to us, and what the expectation would be of the definition of an outlook and what it would be. Thank you.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I almost had it through too. Yanni.
So just to reflect on the previous debate around public transport, like in terms of the debate about a trial, but we have a climate change emergency. Every day that goes past, we're losing more and more trees in the city. We have to act now. The longer we leave it doing anything tangible, the worse that our environmental outcomes are. So, I just really want to encourage councillors to support efforts to address the tree canopy issue in our city. We are not one of the, despite being called the Garden City, we do have a lack of tree canopy compared to other cities around the country. And we also have, in a lot of the infill and intensive housing areas over the last 2 decades, have seen a huge loss in mature trees. And the environmental impact of that is generational. It's not something that you can just fix overnight. So please support the efforts around protecting our trees and enabling more mature trees to be retained in our city. It's really important for the environment, and we actually don't have a lot of time, because we've already seen, just in the time between the tree policy hearing and today, a huge number of trees getting destroyed, and a huge impact in terms of the environment. So I appreciate the work staff are doing on this. I appreciate that central government have a much bigger role to play than what we can, but we also have things that we can do if we choose to prioritise it, and the time is to act now, not wait for later. Thank you.
Yeah.
thank you. We all understand that we don't have a lot of power in a lot of this, but it's really important that we identify the areas that we do have a voice in, and really make sure that we do everything we can to control the quality of the builds, the way that we want our communities to be, to protect our trees. It's a huge issue that's repeatedly being brought to us by our concerned residents. So it's going to be interesting to see as we engage with the public how those kind of messages coming through. And it's good to hear that there's an ability for staff to actually consider those things as they come through. So thank you for the work.
Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, say aye. Sorry, hang on, Aaron.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to quickly say that trees don't have to be incompatible with development, and I encourage every councillor at this table to search their favourite cities around the world and look at their tree canopy cover, compare it to our city, because most of them will probably be higher. I'd be surprised if you found one that wasn't, unless it's in the middle of a desert. And then and then look at the density of population in those cities, and you'll see that that's far higher than here. So there's trees with way better cities with way better canopy cover with much higher densities. So the two can go hand in hand. And so look up your favourite cities, look what they've done, and let's take some lessons.
Thank you, Aaron. Actually, totally agree with what you said. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.